PR Connections Radio presents this episode of the PR Connections podcast is brought to you by Classy Communications PR and Advertising. Classy Communications provides public relations and marketing solutions for businesses, professionals, and nonprofit organizations. They can deliver the true meaning of your business with press releases, social media marketing, web development, email marketing, book publishing, and much more. Wherever your potential clients are, they can help you connect with them. Visit classycommunications.net to learn more about their suite of services that can help your business stand out from the rest. Classy Communications is your solution for business success.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Breaking the Silence, Finding the Courage to be Heard. This is the podcast where we turn quiet fears into confident voices. And I'm your host, Gail Larson. Now, for those of you who might have missed it, in episode 1, we explored why we stay silent. And then in episode 2, we challenged the myth that confidence has to come first. Now, today we are talking about what happens in the moment when the fear just doesn't show up. It just takes over the microphone. Your heart races, your palms begin to sweat, your mind goes blank, and suddenly your body feels like, it's working against you. So this episode, when fear takes the microphone, in today's conversation, we're going to just understand what happens to our bodies. So fear no longer feels like failure. So today, as you can see, we have Bailey Romatoski, and she is the co-founder of Joy Lee, which we explored actually with our first episode with Cheryl Lynn. But most recently, Bailey has embarked upon an exciting new endeavor known as Our Place. So Bailey, please tell us a little bit more about you and about this.
Thank you, Gail. It's so exciting to be here. My name's Bailey, like Gail said. I am the co-founder of Joy Lee, which is a new emotions model, and more recently, the founder of Our Place, which is a local discovery app launching in Portland, Oregon in about 30 days, March 13th. So really looking forward to that. And its goal is to reduce the reliance on social media algorithms and sponsored results and get people back out into the community and discovering their local businesses.
That's fantastic. And, I'm a part of, a community partner as far as Joy Lee is concerned. And it's just been a phenomenal experience. Number one, getting to know you, Bailey, as well as Cheryl and your mom, and just all of the wonderful people as a part of that. And part of that experience, we experience all these different emotions, and fear being one of them. So, how does fear in your experience affect your body?
So I'll maybe speak about this from like the Joy Lee perspective for a moment, because we really put some thought into the way that we evaluate emotions. So the historic way was to look at them negative and positive, or good versus bad. And when we ask a question, how are you? We typically answer with something like fine or good or not so good. So we all kind of follow that good to bad feeling. But when we were looking at it, we're like, every kind of emotion has a different version of it. Like anger can feel bad or it can feel good, or loneliness can feel bad or if it can feel good. Same thing with like excitement, that can feel bad and maybe like anxious, or it can feel good. And so instead of evaluating emotions on whether or not they feel bad or good, we decided to evaluate emotions on how safe are they, how present are they, and how much joy are you feeling. And we did that because the way that your body approaches presence and being able to be connected to your own thoughts and your own experience is with those three things in order. So safety first, then presence, and then joy. And so our body knows if we're safe or not before we are starting to be able to process that, because we redirect energy to things like eyesight. If there's something like threatening in our, the audience, for example, if we're on stage. And so, yeah, fear is the first thing that our body considers when we're thinking about, needing to show up in the world and how we're redirecting all of that energy. So
Exactly. And
mhm,
in our previous conversations, and just to get a little bit personal for a minute, we talk about feeling safe and and safe from that fear.
mhm,
We often hide our feelings before we speak. And so earlier on, you had shared with me what it's like to question your own voice after
mhm,
misdiagnosis or being
mhm.
misunderstood. So, what happens when fear isn't just about speaking, but about trusting your own perception?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I spent years in therapy, and I had experienced some trauma when I was younger, and I was misdiagnosed as bipolar. And I think it's because I didn't have the right words to talk about what it was I was experiencing and how that was supposed to change. And so, yeah, I was misdiagnosed bipolar, and the first thing that I learned was to not trust myself. So I learned not to trust the words that I was saying or the emotions that I was having, or how I was showing up in the world and the expressions on my face, even. So I really had a really difficult time with that misdiagnosis. Turns out I'm actually autistic. And, some of that social anxiety comes from a very real place of not being able to interpret things correctly in the room. And so I forget the question, I think.
Oh, no. Basically, we were talking about what happens, when this affects how you show up in terms of speaking with others, maybe one on one, maybe speaking with others, especially, in your
Yeah.
professional life.
Yeah. So I guess where I was going with that is I spent a really long time in a really low safety experience. And so it took a, a while to sort of rediscover emotions that felt confident or comfortable. And I really had to sit down and look at our emotions map and explore some of those emotions in ways with, visualization and practicing what feeling safe could even look like for myself, because hadn't experienced it in such a long time. And then there's the other like element of, having the courage to be on stage, which is trusting that the people out there are there to be kind to you and hear you out, even through that fear. And so I learned, especially, I started an internal organization for mental and physical health awareness when I was at back in corporate. And so for 14,000 employees, they now had a group where they could go and talk vulnerably about their mental and physical health. And I learned from doing that and from talking about my own misdiagnosis and diagnosis that there's a lot of people out there that can relate to me and can relate to what I'm going through. So even that fear is something that they relate to, and that they're, I think, a lot less critical of than we like to think, going on stage.
Absolutely. And, I like the fact that, you took the bull by the horns and in essence, you created a community where you would have that support from others who understood really what you were feeling like. And so, as
Yeah.
a neurodivergent person, just trying to navigate through this environment, um, can you conceivably give us some examples, maybe in you know, your previous corporate experiences, where people initially you felt they weren't necessarily taking you seriously, and
Mhm.
maybe how that changed or how you affected their perception of you?
Yeah. One of the companies I worked at was extremely hierarchical and very kind of old-fashioned in their approach to vulnerability and being emotional in the workplace. And I was also pretty young when I started working there. So I was, I had all of the odds stacked against me kind of in such an environment. And so there have been like so many examples of um I don't know. I'm a smart lady and a person that's very focused on data and on automation. And when you've got leaders who are not as in the weeds, they're not seeing a lot of the same picture or the reasons or the problems behind some of the processes that aren't working. And so it really requires the young inexperienced people to communicate what's going on so that the leaders are able to make decisions. And they don't appreciate that as much as you think that they might. So I think that what I learned about speaking up and having the courage to say what's on my mind and make the changes that I want to be made is presentation. Like I don't necessarily have to have the most confidence or stability in my voice, but to make a message that's clear enough for someone to understand why I might be bringing it to the table in the first place. And then what we learn in corporate kind of nonstop is don't speak up unless you have a solution to present as well, which at the beginning I really hated because I'm like, well, I'm not always going to be the person to need to come up with a solution. But what they really meant by that was talk to your peers, talk to other leaders, like, don't not do it. Just like spend some time doing some discovery so that when you do bring it to the table, we can have a real conversation about what that looks like. So I don't know, lots of fear in the in the corporate workplace, but ultimately you gotta speak up to get the practice that you need to be somebody that they listen to.
Absolutely. And you really have to take your own experience and knowledge seriously and not be intimidated by those that maybe you consider at the time to have more experience. It brings back to me my experience when I left the classroom and entered into the corporate world of publishing. And I remember sitting in one of the bigger national meetings, and they proposed a question to the audience, and I'm sitting there all intimidated because it's my first national meeting and all of that. And then, something just came over me and I decided that I was going to respond. And I started out with having just come from the classroom, and almost I could hear the chairs whipping around and the faces, turning on their axis, because I immediately made reference to what my experience was. And they reacted because maybe they hadn't either never been in the classroom or either their experiences was so far back. So if you have confidence in what you have and what you bring to the table, then in my opinion, that helps to build that confidence when you want to speak, in, let's say, rooms that may feel intimidating.
Yeah. The whole time you're telling that story, I was thinking of the one time at the same corporation I keep thinking of. I was sitting in a room we were numbered. We had levels. So I was a level 6. A supervisor was a level 5, manager 4, 3, 2. And in the room that I was in, I was the only level 6. It was otherwise 3s and a couple 2s. And so my director was sitting with me. But yeah, I was the youngest, most inexperienced person in the room. And they were all talking about needing to reduce visibility into each other's processes. So if you think about corporate and talking about silos, they were talking about making those silos more siloed. And I'm sitting in the room like, are you joking? As somebody who's an analyst and working every single day with coworkers from different parts of the company, I need to know what they're doing and when they're doing it so that I can do my job better as well. And I was sitting dumbfounded for the whole time that they were talking. And then while everybody else is kind of casually contributing to the conversation, they're meant to be there, they're meant to be part of that conversation, I stood up and put my hands on the table and I was like, I know you guys don't know me, but absolutely not. We cannot go backwards in this. And it shut the conversation down. And I think that they were just stunned by the courage, to be able to be somebody that's totally ignored normally and speak up, but also recognized the importance of that comment because it took so much courage to speak up as well. So I think that they really respected, that I had the awareness to speak up. So yeah, that was crazy, but kind of a lot of fun too.
Yeah, those moments can be intense because you just never know how you're going to be perceived. But fortunately, it was the right direction to go because it definitely made a difference. That's for sure. So you've said in the past that you tend to prepare heavily before speaking, but sometimes over preparation can maybe slow you down. So in your opinion, how do you balance planning with just trusting yourself in the moment?
Yeah, so my problem is that I'm a really logical thinker. I'm very detail oriented. And so if I give a lot of trainings and I give a lot of presentations that are educational and like more in the weeds, and I have no training like you might as what being a teacher looks like. So when I go up there, I want to give every single detail so that they can, consume as much as possible. But that's not always the right way. And so when I think about balance, I think about you're just on stage having a conversation with a bunch of people. They don't want to be overwhelmed by what they have to hear, or what you have to share with them. But at the same time, they do care and they are listening. So I think that my approach to balance these days is, especially when I'm giving like a training or something like this, is to really keep my slide count down and keep the words on the page down and just kind of go with the vibe of what the room is feeling. And is it time to go to the next slide, or do we want to spend some more time on the slide and kind of talk through it a little bit more? But yeah, over preparedness can certainly be an issue. If I like write a whole speech too, I tend to read it instead of, maybe looking at some bullet points and having a little bit more of a natural tone as well.
Yep, that makes all the difference in the world. And
Mm-hmm.
we hadn't talked about this, but you and I both were involved in a pretty intense but fun and exciting experience just a few weeks ago, the
Mm-hmm.
JQ60 Voices, where there
Mm-hmm.
were 60 leaders in Las Vegas that were brought to the stage, where everyone gave 60 seconds of a either motivational or inspirational speech. And
Mm-hmm.
you were an integral part of that. And going into this, knowing initially what your, well, not necessarily fear of speaking, but
Yeah.
trepidation about speaking, how did that preparation for that event unfold?
Yeah, so this was an event that we planned months for, and it really kind of snuck up there on the end, especially for me and for my speech. Everybody else had 60 seconds. I had 4 minutes. And I didn't really know that until a couple of days beforehand, which I think for me was kind of good because I was the like, if somebody's gonna quit or maybe we have too many people, somebody needs to take my spot, or I'm organizing the event, so I was flexible until the very end. But my 4 minutes, I really wanted to be meaningful for like why we were all there. And so I did read my speech, but I'm glad that I did because I felt like I got out what I needed to get out. And I had so many people come up to me afterward and say like, I've really resonated with what you said, or I have a son or a daughter in the same situation, or it's really important to me that joy doesn't come across as toxically positive, because the focus on joy is so central to the mission. But I really wanted people to understand that joy is not what everybody kind of imagines it is, and laughter and smiles, but it's the authenticity and like purpose behind what you're saying. So when I was planning for that, I really like had the few things that I wanted to say and then wrapped them into a story. And I'm not, I wish that I had it memorized and had the time to like do that better, but I think it went really well. And I looked at the recording. I think it's fine. So I'm happy with it. I'm glad I got up there. So.
And I agree with you. What you said definitely resonated with me, and you seemed 100% natural and poised. So that's more about, what happens when you're in the moment and
Mm-hmm.
you don't let fear take the wheel, so to speak. And, I reflect back on, my preparation for that, 60 seconds of brilliance, which we don't want to be perfect, but I
Yeah.
practice. And then when I got
Mm-hmm.
up there, it wasn't even about the practice. It was like
Yeah.
me in the moment, looking out at the audience, looking at you and thinking,
Mm-hmm.
this is for you. And
Mm-hmm.
so it became less about me memorizing every word. It was more,
Yeah.
just being expressive and, hoping that it was going to be well received. So,
I think
I
you and me, and it's kind of what we've been talking about a lot on this call so far, is that knowing what your message is and being confident about it is the important piece. Because I too, like, I wrote mine down and I read from it, but I was so confident about it because I had prepared it. And yeah, getting on stage, it was like I wasn't shaking reading my sheet of paper, I was reading it in a way that I, knew that was going to resonate with people. And yeah, it could have been cuter and more like shoulders tall or whatever, but I think it was good enough. And yours was great. Everybody did so good. I was the timer, so I timed down for the last 5 seconds, as you know, and it was really amazing to see everybody kind of reach their 60-second moment. And in some folks, you could see like their own personal judgment of how they did, and in other folks, they were like, "Oh, we did it! We just made it to the finish line." So everybody's a little different, but still, everybody got up there, and it was amazing to hear all of the stories. And I don't think that like confidence or tone like changed my perception of those stories. Like I heard the message behind each and every single one of them, and they were all so cool. So
Has there ever been a time where you've been asked to speak extemporaneously and you were obviously not prepared because you didn't know that this was, it was in the moment? And what happened to you in that moment?
yes. Actually, I can think of a time. I got a new manager, and like brand new that week, maybe that day, and we had a presentation in front of like 15 engineering directors that you can never get in the same room, like huge important meeting. I didn't know I was going. I didn't even know the meeting was happening. My director was supposed to bring my manager. My manager was new and had no idea what was going on. So they were like, "Come on, Bailey." I'd never seen the slides. I'd never seen anything. And so they pulled me in the room, and there's all these people that I'm, intimidated by. And they told me not to talk. Like, they're like, "Bailey, don't talk. Like, you're not allowed to talk in this." And I'm like, "Okay, I don't know why I'm here then, but okay." And so I'm sitting and I'm starting to watch them go through the slides, and they don't know what's going on or how to present, and they don't know anything about the process, very obviously. And so the engineering directors start asking questions that they can't answer. So my boss turns to me and says, "Okay, you're going to give us like a 5-minute spiel about exactly what this is and what the problem is and how they need to help." And I was probably like drenched in sweat and like not dressed for the meeting because I didn't know what was happening. And like, but thankfully I was an expert at the material. And so there was a lot of nerves in my voice, but I was so passionate about getting what I needed from them in such like a rare opportunity that it still came out all right. I think I doubt that I used the 5 minutes, probably more like 2 or 3 because I was talking so fast and afraid. But yeah, it was scary and exciting, and I walked away feeling really grateful that they gave me the microphone, because that wasn't their plan, and we probably weren't going to otherwise get what we needed. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And,
yeah.
5 minutes is an
Yeah.
eternity when asked to, speak just off the cuff. Because a lot of
Mhm.
times, like I'm part of Toastmasters, and our prepared speeches are 5 to 7 minutes. And
Mm.
that is truly intimidating. And so to be
Mhm.
able to speak 5 minutes just off the cuff without rambling on about something and then getting to the point where, what was the question? Is always very intimidating, of course.
Yeah.
So, and then just in thinking about that, because
Mhm.
you took the mic and you said yourself just now, I was very grateful for that
Mhm.
opportunity to do this. So,
Mhm.
on a day-to-day basis, can you think about, or just relay to us, what does recovering that trust in your voice look like?
Mm. I mean, I have to point to the chair of joy. It's too good of an exercise to not go back to. You really don't need, I think, a different exercise. But sit, breathe, think of a moment of joy and feel it in your body. And I don't think that I had it back then in the example that I gave, but um, certainly now when I'm feeling uneasy or disconnected from myself, or like I have that flutter in my voice, that's coming from, fear, which means we have less access to presence and less access to joy. I think just, taking some deep breaths and reconnecting with your body. And for me, like doing a speech like that and like being grateful for an opportunity like that, but then coming out of it and being kind to yourself about it, right? Like if I could come out of it and then criticize every single thing that I did and never get back out there again, but instead, like there's some good and some of it wasn't perfect, but like focusing on, what went well and did they get the message at the end of the day? And if yes, like that was the whole point of it. So it's okay. And so, yeah, being kind to yourself and breathing afterward so that the next time you do it, you're just a little bit more confident than you were before.
Absolutely. And, for those of you out there that are listening, that is really sage advice, because you just never know when all of a sudden that fear is going to take over.
Mm-hmm.
And, your heart, just like I said in the beginning, starts to pound, or, you get so nervous and you can't figure out the words that you need to say. But then to have a consistent way, like sit, breathe, think, and feel, that you can call upon, really does make a difference, because that gives you the confidence in yourself to be in control of the situation.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times, like during like these recordings, that, I know what I want to say, but then all of a sudden things are freezing up, and then I am thinking, breathe. Think about, how you want to feel, and, just all of that just kind of brings clarity, and then you can move on. So yes, if you're thinking about overcoming these fears, find some consistent way, whether it's just to sit, breathe, think, and feel. What you do, bring that confidence back, just like you've done, Bailey, and you've advised all of us out there to find that method. So earlier on, you talked about being a very data-oriented person, and looking at the details. And you told me yourself that you feel like you have this gift for seeing solutions, and fearing how, and I consider it to be brilliance, might be perceived by others. So tell us a little bit more about that, because some people are very intimidated by data and detail-oriented people.
Yeah. Well, I did not go to college. I've kind of self-taught on everything that I've ever done. And I got really interested in data because it was a way for me to sort of like prove some of my discoveries, right? Like I could use data to point to facts and other ways to kind of like reinforce what it is that I'm talking about. But yeah, I think because I didn't go to school, I also kind of carry this, I don't think that it's shame, but like a cultural judgment of people who didn't go to school and don't have that experience. And so when I invent a new emotions model or like launch a new app with no experience doing those things before, I imagine a lot of judgment coming my way. But what I find is that people are eager to learn, and so it doesn't really matter what the background is, as long as what you're bringing to the table is honest and genuine and based in some sort of reality and truth, right? So I think that I do still have a lot of fear about sharing what it is that I'm, creating and working on. But I find over and over and over and over again that sharing it and doing it and bringing people to the table just kind of knocks down that fear, because I've never gotten that judgment to my face. Like nobody has ever come to me and said like, oh, that's bad or that's stupid, so I think it's just like having to do it over and over again. And I don't know, I did have a moment yesterday where my UI, my new front end developer, sent to me some like really amazing changes on my app, and I'm like, wow, like it's been 5 months since I started this project and it looks real now, which is insane. But also I did this. I like had to have a moment with myself where I'm like, holy cow, like this came from right here. And so like it's very cool. And I also feel the fear every single day of I still have to wake up and make the decision to keep doing this and to keep moving forward. And if I wasn't doing that, we wouldn't be here today. So I'm impressed with myself and also terrified of the future. So yeah.
Oh, that is so awesome. And especially to hear that you're impressed with yourself, because that inner confidence, makes all the difference in the world. So as we get ready to close, if someone listening is afraid because their body feels out of control when getting ready to speak, what would you like for them to know?
It's okay. Fear is like totally a normal part of the human experience, and it's going to be the first thing that you feel every time you do something new, and you just got to do it anyway.
That's profound. So thank you. Thank you so much, Bailey, for being on our show today and just helping everyone to understand that fear instead of fighting it. And to our listeners, fear may grab the microphone, but it doesn't have to rewrite your story. So thanks everyone for listening. Thanks, Bailey, for being on our show, Breaking the Science.
Thank you for having me.
Breaking the Silence. And we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.